would be no solution to South Africa's problems without the participation of the ANC, which is recognized by the majority of the South African people as their genuine representative. The ANC appreciated the significance of and the democratic manner in which the decision to meet the ANC was taken. The meeting discussed a range of issues pertinent to the solution of the crisis in our country. Discussions were in the main guided by the questions and concerns posed and expressed by students at the campuses represented. The delegations agreed that apartheid is the central cause of conflict in our country and that the Pretoria government is incapable of resolving South Africa's problems. Apartheid cannot be reformed. As such, the creation of a non-racial and democratic South Africa on the basis of one person, one vote lies in the hands of the democratic forces of our country.
I wonder if, by way of a summing up from the NUSAS point of view, it might be possible to outline for us from your point of view, the major content of the discussion, and as a result of that, the major action you're going to take when you go home, and the precise purpose of that action.
Could you please say from which paper?
Peter Wellman, Associated Press.
I think firstly, one needs to understand the process that NUSAS has gone through up until this stage. There's an expression of concern by students on the predominantly white universities of the current political crisis in South Africa and the recognition of the representativity of the ANC amongst the mass of South Africans. A need was felt to conduct such a meeting. Now, that process was established in a democratic way, and I think is representative of the mass of students on our campuses. Just to run through that, the 2 weeks before this meeting has taken place, we've held a series of mass meeting rallies on all our campuses, in which students themselves expressed their support for such a meeting to take place, and in fact dictated through their participation the content of such discussions from the NUSAS delegation. In that light, we saw more than 10,000 students participate in that process over the last 2 weeks inside South Africa. And also those 10,000 students dictating the areas of discussion which NUSAS representatives would engage in here at the meeting. The response was fairly overwhelming, and of those that participated in the end, more than 95% of students who participated in the decision supported it unanimously. Now, I think that laid an important emphasis for NUSAS to take into account in conducting or participating in this meeting, was that we were here as representatives, hoping to represent the concerns, the fears and the ideas of white students on a broad level on our campuses about the future of our country, and to gauge the opinion of the ANC in that regard. I think the NUSAS delegation has been very satisfied with the process of the meeting, that many of the concerns, the fears, the questions raised by white students have been dealt with and answered. And from that side, we are completely happy with the process that has taken place. I think our intention as part of the decision of students on our campuses was and is to report back the content of discussions to our students on the different campuses and to other interested sectors in South Africa. That's a process that we will set in motion once we return.
Tim Leach, Worldwide Television News.
Radio. The talks notwithstanding, there's still a war going on in South Africa, and I'm wondering what the NUSAS position is, not just on what you refer to as the call for an end to conscription and the presence of troops in the township, but what the role of students is vis-a-vis the SADF and the conflict that's going on right now inside South Africa.
Well, I think firstly to say that we were all highly conscious of the fact that there is a war going on in South Africa, and that NUSAS in participating in this meeting in no sense was seeking to set itself up as a negotiating factor in the future of South Africa. We claim only to be democratically minded white students struggling alongside black South Africans for democracy in South Africa. On the question of the role of the SADF, I think that students are directly affected, white students are directly affected by the SADF. They are subject to enforced conscription for a period of 2 years and involvement for a further 2 years thereafter. And with the current high-profile role and overt role the SADF is playing in attempts to quell resistance inside the country, I think the whole question in many white students' minds of participation in the SADF has reached a higher stage than ever before. As you know, it would be illegal for NUSAS in South Africa to openly suggest that people not participate in the SADF, but one could say that there's a recognition amongst broad groupings of students on our campuses that the overwhelming opinion from the black community is that the SADF is playing a directly oppressive role in South Africa, that they view the participation of white youth in the SADF as an act of aggression. And I think one could lead on from that the broad lessons that white students on the campuses are learning.
I see on your communique there's an issue of the release of Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners. What role would you see NUSAS playing in trying to have the political prisoners released?
Well, historically, it's been a key demand of ours on our campuses and in our political activity. As to the specific role that we could play, I think first and foremost to ensure that there is backing given to that demand from sectors of the white community, alongside and in conjunction with other democratic organizations calling for the release. I think our participation specifically in the campaign is aimed at raising that call as an urgent call among sectors of the white community focusing in on our campuses and other sectors of the white community, specifically to make the issue known not just of the need for the release of political prisoners, but the reality of the fact that leaders and representative leaders in South Africa are in prison, key sectors of any future solution. And that part and parcel of building and moving towards that solution is the unconditional release of political prisoners, who in many sectors of the white community are regarded, because of the stand of the government, as criminal elements. But growing sectors of the white community have to start realizing that political prisoners in South Africa are ultimately patriots, representative aspirations of the South African people, and are going to be crucial to the makeup of any future. And I think that's broadly within that outline that NUSAS will be participating in raising such a call.
Tim Leach, Worldwide Television News. The last time a body of students tried to come and talk to the South Africans, that was thwarted by the South African government. This time you've made it. Do you anticipate any action against you when you return to South Africa, or has this been sanctioned by the South African government?
Well, it's received no sanction, and I think any action that they take will be determined by them. I don't think they will exercise a prediction on our part or necessarily be accurate. Other than to say that as the campaign developed, there was an expectation on our side that there was a large possibility of action against us. That was one of the reasons why, after the process had run on most of the campuses and the mandate had been received, that the delegation left as soon as possible, hoping to avoid any state action that would prevent such a visit taking place. I think to say is that whatever happens, we've come here as a delegation, representative of the feelings of students on our campuses. We've come here as concerned South Africans. We've come here sincerely in an attempt to share information and find out information that is denied us in South Africa as a result of the stance of the apartheid government. And that we do that with full knowledge of the possible repercussions. That remains for the South African government to take steps on. We've decided, and I think it's the broad feeling of students on the campuses, that the South African government is a frustrating factor in building a non-racial future in South Africa, and is incapable of setting the South African nation in motion along that path. And that realistically, if sectors of the white South African community are going to be taking a solution to the future seriously, then we can no longer take government sanction as the deciding factor in what action we take. And I think there is a very clear position adopted by students on our campuses in supporting such a meeting taking place.
What are the possibilities, though, of any action against you? I mean, what could happen when you get back to South Africa?
Well, I think the possibilities are really the possibilities that face any South African every day of their lives who's working against apartheid. I mean, there's an entire range from, not to be speculative, but the array of security legislation they used systematically against the democratic movement throughout, whether it be banning orders, detention without trial, banning of report-back meetings, etc. I mean, that is obviously not an area that we can dictate.
Australian Broadcasting Corporation.
Again from Ziana.
The reality of the apartheid system. NUSAS itself advocates a path of peaceful opposition to apartheid. But without having policy on the matter, I think one should express the fact that...
Peter Thorneycroft, Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Could you tell me, please, what the main concerns of the students were, what the main questions they wanted answered by the ANC?
Are we going to get to that democratic future? I think students are grappling with all those questions very urgently, and I think it's related fairly directly to their own education. University education in South Africa certainly is not directed towards catering for the needs of the country as a whole and the population as a whole. And I think more and more students are recognizing that fact, that if the skills and the education they're receiving are to be employed in the South Africa of the future that is going to be very different, then it's time that they understood that reality more, understood what contribution they could make to bringing about a democratic future and ensuring that the education was in line with that.
Peter Gregson of Reuters. I'd like to ask a question to the ANC side, if I could. Perhaps, I believe, Mr. Maharaj, you've been at all the talks that you've had so far. You've had a series with businessmen, trade unionists, churchmen, now students. Can you tell me of what benefits to the ANC these meetings and these discussions are, and what, if any, changes to ANC policy or strategy are they likely to bring?
Let me start by saying that we address ourselves as the ANC, not primarily from the point of view of what benefits to the ANC accrues from these discussions, but what benefits to the liberation of our people. These talks have taken place and have acquired a certain prominence in the media, but the most important factor that underlies these talks is the widespread recognition in South Africa across the spectrum that the apartheid system has led our country in a cul-de-sac. And we have met these various delegations on the basis of that recognition. Our objective in these talks has been to search for common ground, to isolate the Botha regime to its narrowest possible base. We believe that that is an essential part of the process of liberating our people. But the foundation of that process is to unite the oppressed people, first and foremost. We believe that that process is taking place in our country, and the results of that are to be seen in the fact that the oppressed black majority are no longer prepared to live any longer under that system. And that underlies the unrest and the uprisings that are sweeping through our country. The African National Congress, of course, sees both the process taking place and the effect of these talks as contributing towards the liberation struggle and uniting our people. The present round of talks that are taking place with NUSAS as the NUSAS spokesman has indicated, show a widespread concern amongst the white students. They are part of a constituency that has benefited from the apartheid state and from the system of racialism. The fact that they today are concerned also is a recognition of black opposition, as well as a growing recognition in their own minds that that system is wrong and needs to be changed. So the ANC regards these talks in that framework. It does not approach these talks from the point of view that they would reach any agreement or that they constitute any form of negotiation. They are merely a process of bringing our people together in opposition against the apartheid system.
And why in particular we're having this meeting at the house of the Ghanaian High Commissioner?
Well, the Africa, including inside South Africa. But of course we know that we cannot meet easily in South Africa. We are a banned organization. And therefore we rely on the generosity of host countries. Zimbabwe, in particular in this instance, has been willing to allow us to meet here. And we regard that as a sign of Zimbabwe. Is not only a problem inside South Africa, but is a problem for the whole Southern Africa region and for the continent of Africa as a whole, for that matter. He gladly made available the facilities. They are not the sort of facilities that the ANC has command over on its own right in any of these countries. The whole continent of Africa will not be free.
Just one last question. In view of these series of talks and what you've indicated,
We are not revising our estimates on the basis of the talks, ladies and gentlemen. We have begun to revise our perspectives in terms of the time schedule by what has been happening in our country since around about August 1984. Sweeping process of unrest and a process which indicates an extremely deep unity amongst our people. It also indicates to the fact that the majority of the African people have reached a point where they not only accept the need for the armed struggle to prosecute the struggle for liberation, but have gone beyond that stage to the point where they regard themselves as part of the process of taking to arms. So two processes are taking place at home. Mass action, and that action today is incorporating revolutionary violence. We believe that those two processes are essential in understanding that events are now moving at such a speed that it is possible for us to say that apartheid will be overthrown in the near future. We still refuse to put a time scale. I think we have become sufficiently seasoned to realize that putting a time scale to a liberation war is a foolhardy exercise. The main thing is to inculcate in our people the understanding that we should fight on no matter what the odds, and that the African National Congress is committed to leading our people until victory, no matter what the price.
One last question.
Which you find an organized expression of leadership will be difficult to see from a distance, and even sometimes from within the situation. But I think that a survey of the situation, anti-pass campaign, that call has been taken up by the United Democratic Front. The African National Congress, for its part, in its January 8th statement this year, highlighted the anti-pass campaign as a major campaign that should be undertaken by our people this year. So there is coherence emerging in that situation, and I do not think that we will support in any way the view from any observer that there is no leadership in that situation.